Today I'm going to show you guys how to install coilovers on your car. Alright, so I got the Skunk 2 Pro ST full coilovers. Here are the adjusting claws for the rings, adjusting rings. Holy smokes. So these are the rear ones because you can tell by the shock bottoms. And these are the fronts because you can tell by the shock bottoms right here. There's no fork. It looks amazing. So these are full coilovers. It's built together, independent ride height adjustment and independent preload adjustment on the spring. So this tutorial will work for both full coilovers or a hybrid, which is just aftermarket strut or OEM strut with a aftermarket coilover sleeves or OEM springs. Wow, it looks absolutely amazing. Okay, so this is the Skunk 2 Pro ST, and you can adjust. This locks the height adjustment, so you can loosen it like that, and then you can adjust this however you want it for the height, car's height. And then you lock it up again. First things first, you're gonna jack up the car, put it on jack stands, and remove the wheels. If you have a sway bar like me right here, it's highly recommended that you detach the end links because a sway bar connects both sides of the car's lower control arms together. But our goal is to lower the control arms a lot so that we have clearance to remove the coilovers. You can't do that if it's still attached to the sway bar. Alright, I just detached the sway bar, and here's the end link in pieces. You want to detach the tie rod because it lets you move the hub easier to clear out the coilovers later. Next, you want to remove this bolt right here, which is on the upper part of the fork. This will disconnect the strut bottom with the fork. You can always use a screwdriver or a pick on the other side of the bolt to push it out while you loosen it. Remove the lower fork bolt. Use a wrench on one side of the bolt and remove the other nut up the other side. There you go. So now that it's detached, you want to lower the lower control arm so that it separates the strut bottom and the fork. See, now it's separated like this. When you pull it out, take out the fork like this, take it out. So at the very top of the strut tower, you're going to see two nuts that hold the top hat of the coilovers. So once you remove the two nuts on top, holding the top hat, the coilovers will drop down, and now you can remove the coilovers by sliding it downwards. Just like that. Beautiful. Okay, for the rear suspension, you're going to do the same thing. I have a sway bar right here, and here's the end link. I'm going to detach it from right there for the sway bar to be disconnected. You see the end link detached right there? Alright, now you can wiggle it. Alright, so this is the inside of the car, in the trunk area, and this is the strut tower, and you're going to see two nuts, one there and one over there. When you loosen those two nuts, the coilovers will fall from underneath. Alright, here are the two nuts I just removed off of the strut tower right there. Alright, so here's the rear coilovers out. It's pretty simple. If you need clearance, since the sway bar is disconnected, you can always do this. This is what I did. Just take your foot and just go down like that. Lower the LCA or the hub. So it does that so you have enough for the shock bottoms to clear, and then you pull it out. Before I put back the new coilovers, I'm going to remove the wheel assembly just to show you and give you a better view of what I'm actually doing behind this because it's hard to see. Alright, so this is the front coilovers. You're going to install the fork and onto the new coilovers. Put back this bolt. Just hand tighten, don't torque it down. Just leave it like that. You want to take coilovers. So feed the coilover top hat so that the bolts are on top of the strut tower. So here's a view from the top, under the hood. So one hand you feed the coilover top hat from underneath the fender, feed it upwards so the bolts are exposed here. And then the other hand just tighten it so it holds it up in place. Just hand tighten for now. Now you're gonna want to mount the fork to the lower control arm right here. Hand tighten. Now you can jack the lower control arm so that the gap between the fork and the coilovers can close, and then you can tighten the pinch bolt behind the fork. So jack up the car until the car lifts off the jack stands a little bit. Now that's off the jack stands a little bit, you know that this is the maximum gap closing. Now you can tighten the pinch bolt behind the fork. Because the fork and the shock connection doesn't need to move anymore, we're going to torque it down this bolt now. 32 foot-pounds. You can release the jack now. Okay, some coilovers will come with the spring preloaded by their adjusting at the factory, and some will just give you whatever and just lay it out to you. If yours did come preloaded from the factory and you want to change it to something else, I'll show you how. If yours didn't come preloaded from the factory, I can show you a very popular method that will give it a nice standard preload. Okay, first you want to make sure the bottom one here is just hand tightened down towards the fork. If it's not tightened and you want to preload it, the whole strut might spin. Okay, first thing, you want to back off the lower ring. Now you're going to lower the top ring until there's no more tension on the spring. If it's too tight, just use your tool. You want to do this until the spring is loose from the top of the strut tower. Alright, now we can start. One hand holds the spring all the way up to the strut tower. One hand holds the spring up all the way to the top hat. Apply pressure upwards. In the other hand, turn the ring and just keep hand tightening until you can't tighten it anymore with your hands. And that's about as much as I can go without using a tool with my hands. We're going to raise the bottom ring upwards, and this will be an initial mark for us so we know where we started. So just raise it up until it touches the top ring. There you go. And then now you're going to back it off a little bit so that, like that, just back it off a little bit so that when you turn the upper ring, it doesn't turn both rings at the same time. Now take your claw and move this upwards, like that. Just keep moving upwards. It doesn't take that long. I'm gonna check it. It doesn't fit, so you gotta keep going. Alright, now you can see that the gap is perfectly the same size as the claw. And you can double check with the other side too. And it should be the same. Now you can raise the lower ring all the way up. And now we're gonna lock these settings by moving the upper ring downwards and the bottom ring upwards. This is called a gem lock or a gem nut. And when you move two nuts together in the same direction, the locking is very superior. A lot of times people slip and hit their knuckles into the car, and it happens. It's very common actually. So just make sure everything's firmly, the claw is digging into the ring slots, and just make sure it's nice and firm. Some people call the claws as knuckle busters. Okay, to adjust the ride height, this ring locks the height adjustment in place, so you want to loosen it before you adjust. So you're going to use these two rings to adjust the height. You always want to move the ring in the opposite direction. So the upper ring you always want to move down, and the bottom ring you always want to move up. Upper ring downwards will lower the car, bottom ring upwards will raise the car. When you're done adjusting the height, move the lowest ring downwards and lock it downwards towards the shock bottom. Tighten it by hand temporarily because height adjustment takes a lot of trial and error because you don't know what's perfect or not until the car sits down. So when you finally found the right height, you're going to take the claw and tighten it for real downwards towards the shock bottom. And then you want to measure this. It helps a lot. You measure this and record it on your paper. So you measure the threads here and then the body panel after the car has the wheels on and on the ground and then settled. And this is just my way. Everyone's different. Basically, I have the front four corners of the car, and I already did my left side of the car. It's really smart to do one side of the car and then try to get all the measurements down, then you can replicate it. And the other side will be much faster. So the left side is just my measurement from the body panel from outside the car. I choose a crevice on my body panel and I measure it from the ground. And the right side is the thread spacing on coilovers, and then same with this part too. Car's ride height is exactly how you want it. You can now torque down every single suspension bolt, especially the ones that deals with bushings that I mentioned not to torque down before. Start with the top one because it's easiest because the car's already sitting on the ground, so it's already preloaded. Do the upper control arm mounting bolt. So this is how you preload the suspension when your car is in the air. You jack up either the LCA or the wheel hub. You do that until the car is off your supporting jack. You must have supporting jacks though, just in case the car falls. So you have the LCA to shock fork bolt. You have the end link for the front sway bar bolt. You have the front pivot for the lower control arm bolt. You have the rear pivot for the lower control arm bolt over there in the red. You have the sway bar D bracket, the big fat bushing on the LCA. You gotta torque these down too. This one, at the subframe, this sway bar D bracket, upper control arm against the frame, upper control arm against the trailing arms, the trailing arm bushing, the rear toe arm. Torque all of those down properly.